you are paying for your email list subscribers. From a most basic business standpoint, if you have 5,000 email subscribers or 2,000 email subscribers, your payment is tiered based off of how many subscribers you have. So having a list of 3,000 subscribers that don't have a name, are a cold email and that don't engage with you, that's only good for your ego. And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like I had to at one point be like, okay, well, what do I need, 10,000 emails for if 6,000 of them are the ones actually involved with what's going on? Like, that's where you got to kind of check your ego and just say, I'm only interested in people on my list that are opening, are engaging, are like highly, highly active and supportive. And other than that, you don't want them around. So, and if you don't buy that logic, then the next logic is like, well, you're paying money for those emails that aren't doing anything for you. So, I mean, warm them up or get them out.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 190, which is crazy. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me is your co-pilot, co-host, Mr. Ed Isola. Ed, what's up, dude? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Yes, a day earlier than we normally record the podcast. So we're a little bit sharper today, probably,
Yeah, sure, sharper.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'm doing good.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, it's an exciting start of the week here. I'm pumped to be starting it with a rousing episode of Creative Juice to get the creative juices flowing, because that's what we're all about here.
Heck yeah. Just that sentence has my brain already pumping, so.
Well, yeah, I'm super pumped to get into this episode, actually, because this was an episode that one of our listeners actually reached out and asked us some questions about email marketing and some best practices and some things that he thought would actually be really, really good for us to cover on the show. And we were like, oh man, that's a really, really great idea. So we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty of segmenting your email list. What are some, higher level goals that you should be focused on if you're just starting out? What you need to be thinking about when it comes to, breaking down your fans on your email list into different segments and what value they might bring to you as you grow in your music career. And we're just going to get into it. I think there's a ton of stuff for us to talk about here. We definitely get into a lot of this stuff when it comes to working with artists at IndieX. So I'm pumped, Ed.
Yeah, same. And this is something that I think is really, really important to cover. We mentioned it lightly at the end of the last episode, but having good segmentation on your email list is something that you should try to put in place from day one of forming your email list. When I first started out, I did not do that. And then it ended up costing me in the sense that I had to spend weeks and weeks and weeks retroactively going through and sorting through CSV files and putting names and emails and products purchased with tags and stuff like that so that I could actually use my email list. So whether you're just starting out or you already have an email list, like, this is something that's really, really, really important because not only do you want to build your list, which we've talked about on past episodes, but you want to be able to use it, and good segmentation allows for you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to kick it off, like the way that I kind of look at email marketing and a lot of the stuff that we do at the agency is we look at it really functionally, almost like an e-commerce company. And some of the stuff that I really look at from a high level is like, one, obviously, like, how many subscribers do you have? That's kind of like, the base level. How many people are on your list? And then I like to look at my segments like this. I like to see, one, how many people are a customer, overall, how many customers do I have? And then I like to break those segments a little bit deeper. And I say, how many people have bought from me just once? And how many people have bought from me more than once? So you've got, first time customers and repeat customers. So people who have bought more than one time. And those are, a few of the first level segmentation pieces that I look at, because it really helps you to envision longer term what you need to be doing in your marketing. If you know that you've got a whole bunch of people who have bought from you once and never bought from you again, well, then you've obviously got low hanging fruit right there from a strategy perspective. to start trying to sell to those people again. So I wanted to just kick it off with that, to be like, here, let's kind of lay the foundation here for some of the ways that you can do that.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds like what you're saying is these segments are not only really useful in terms of actually reaching out to people, but also for seeing like where you are in the buddy system and like what your next steps could be. So almost kind of tying back into that past episode with like actionable steps to take for your career, which I think is a really good observation. But yeah, I mean, like, so you just said like, you know, people on your email list, subscribers is the first metric probably anybody's going to look at when you're talking about emails. Second is customers. So I think those are the two baseline that like you kind of really need to have. And then we're going to dive into some of the more, you know, advanced stuff where, like Jack just said, you know, first time or one-time customers, repeat customers, people that bought 3 times plus, like lifetime value customers, all that kind of stuff. But I think something that's important is not only understanding your customers, but also understanding what products they've purchased. So that's something that, like, if we're going to break down, I think really quickly and dive into what are really the two main categories of email segmentation, which would be just general subscribers and like people that are a part of your permission offer, and then customers. When it comes to like permission offer subscribers, what I typically am looking for there is, okay, did I run an opt-in offer of some kind? Have I run an album launch or some kind of bribe for a lead magnet? You want to make sure that those people are in a group or they're tagged so that when somebody comes in, like we've run Can't Feel As Good, which is a permission offer. It's like I could go into Drip and see exactly who on our list has taken part of Can't Feel As Good. And that's really important because I can go offer other people that haven't done it the experience, right? So I think that's kind of one way when you're setting up your permission offer, making sure you tag that. Same thing, if you just have an email sign up form on your website, you can set a tag so that it says, okay, people that have come from the website, they're tagged as website. So what you're doing is really, instead of just throwing everybody into a pot and saying, oh, here's my subscribers, you're trying to tag people as they come into that pot so you can kind of scoop out and say, okay, we've got website subscribers, we've got our permission offer subscribers, and then you can make dedicated offers. So I'll pause there and then we can get into the actual customer breakdown too, because I think that's super important.
Yeah, I mean, all of that totally, that's a great point to bring up. And I didn't even touch that, but you're 100% right. And I would agree. If you were looking at this from overhead and you were seeing like people come into my email list, where are they coming from? What happens to them after they get onto the list? That's kind of like the starting point, right? So like segmenting based on people where people came from, I think is really important, because then you can craft your messaging appropriately. So maybe you've got people who signed up through your bribe, like you said. Maybe you have multiple bribes. A lot of the artists that we work with at the agency, they've got bribes that happen over time. Some things get deprecated over time. Some things just they don't use anymore. Other things are more evergreen and they stick around. New things get added in all the time. So being able to really segment out where people are coming in from, I think is kind of important point number one, 100%. On the customer side of things, what's cool is when it comes to email marketing and integrations, there's a number of email marketing platforms, most of the ones that are good that you would want to use, things like Drip and MailChimp. A lot of email marketing platforms have direct integrations with e-commerce platforms. So your online store. So if you're using Shopify or WooCommerce, these can connect automatically and they can pull in data from those platforms to then, let you know how many people bought more than once, how many people just bought once. And you can do some more advanced tracking, like how many people have spent over, say $300 or $400, which are all really important segments in my mind to have, to set aside your first time customers, your repeat customers. And then if you wanted to get a little bit deeper into like lifetime value tracking, looking at something like, who spent more than $1,000 with me, I want to make sure that I, from time to time, reward them for being in that sort of like top echelon of my fan base. You can do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, Jack, you just had a really good kind of comment that was like permission offers, a lot of the people that we work with and even myself, it's like you have multiple. So it's like you're going to have multiple email sign up sources throughout the life of your career. You're going to have more than one product throughout the life of your career. And a lot of the times with digital marketing, actually every time, like it's lifetime value. That's what you're interested in when it comes to email marketing, is getting people on the list, making them a customer, and then increasing over time their value. So the only way that you can actually track that and then put into place campaigns that allow you to continue to grow your relationship with the your supporters is to have people segmented. So Jack's talking about, you want to have a list of people or a group of people on your email list that have spent over $300 with you. It's like, that's cool because you could send those people, first of all, they're your probably most engaged customers. So you can send them early access to offers. You can send them special offers. You can send them high ticket offers. But if you don't have segmentation in place, you won't know who you're supposed to make the offer to, and you can't make dedicated offers. So I think those are really good things to kind of highlight right there. And we're getting a little excited because like we've done some cool deeper into the system, like retargeting using segmentation. But if you're listening and you're like, okay, well, I've got 100 people on my list and I don't have anything set up, like all we're really saying is go through and make sure that wherever people can sign up or wherever people can buy, that information passes through to your email list. So whether that, like Jack said, is Shopify and it does that automatically if you integrate it, or WooCommerce, that's great. You just want to make sure that you can go in, sort by segment, so that you have a pulse on your email list of where people are coming from. And it's no different than just knowing like, oh, my brother bought a CD of ours, right? You know that in your head, but the segmentation allows you to put that into your autoresponder so you can do it over time and automatically send to people as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Because as your career grows, your list grows, your customer list grows, having this as a foundation is really great. So if you can, one, make sure you can organize it like that and just go back and take the time to do it. And two, if you're able to, afford and have access to like a Shopify or a WooCommerce and a Drip where they integrate, getting those foundational blocks in place for this will allow you to automatically do that over time. Because once you set up, the segmentation in terms of like, okay, this is going to pass through from my store to my autoresponder, it's going to do that continually going forward. So having it set up, it will take care of it going forward. So if you can use something that does it automatically, that's really, really good. Some instances you won't be able to, whether your store maybe doesn't integrate, and then that's going to require a little bit more manual tracking.
Yeah, I love that kind of one-to-one analogy that you made, Ed, about like, oh, I know that my cousin bought a CD from us. When you're moving fans into this permission stage of the buddy system and trying to bring them into a one-on-one, one-to-one channel like email marketing, that's a really good way to think about it. Segmentation and gathering data on your fans allows you to know more about them. So it's not just like a formless list of people that you don't know anything about. The real power behind it is when you can know, like, hey, I know Jay in North Carolina bought, our second record, and I know that he hasn't bought for, 60 days, at least the past 60 days. When you can really get that kind of data on somebody, it allows you to craft the kind of messaging and also build strategy, like we were saying, so that you can, run your marketing in a way that feels very personalized. It really is kind of like relationship driven. So I like that example a lot. But onto your point about, what to do if you've got a store that doesn't integrate, or, maybe you were using Bandcamp and you wanted to bring all of your emails in, and you were doing something like you were manually exporting and then going through your list. What I would probably focus on is doing as much manual segmentation on that spreadsheet and seeing, what can I tell? How many can I match up people from, are there multiple orders on here from the same person? Can I then tag them as part of a repeat purchaser kind of group in my email list? If they've only bought once, if I only see one order in here, can I then, set that as a first-time customer and then have it go from there? That's the way that I would think about it. And that kind of sets you up with like two classes of segmentation. You've got your automatic sort of conditional segmentation that you can do with something like Shopify or WooCommerce, depending on your email marketing platform. And then you've got, some of this more manual stuff that might be based on tagging, which is okay. It's just something you have to keep in mind. It's kind of like the price that you pay for lacking those integrations, but it does allow, you do have that flexibility. It just gives you a little bit more work to do.
Yeah. And in some ways, like, tracking things manually, it's probably not a long-term solution that you want to implement, but it can be an advantage starting out. Like I mentioned earlier, my email list was not segmented or tagged really in any capacity for the first year and a half plus, right? Like I just didn't know that was a thing that needed to be done. And once I found out, I had to go back and do it. But what that allowed me to do was think about, I was doing it manually in advance, right? Like I would say, okay, and I was using like an Excel sheet. This is how much little I knew at that point in terms of segmentation on an email list. But I was like, okay, I've got this list of emails that bought a copy of our first CD. And I have this list of emails that were a part of the experience but didn't buy. And I want to make those people that didn't buy an offer. And so what that allowed me to do was get comfortable by tracking and saying, okay, this person bought, this person didn't. So like Jack said, I started to learn everybody's names and cities and where they lived, which has just really helped long-term with the relationship with our fans, that I get an email, from so-and-so and I know them immediately. That just helps with long-term like relationship building. So tracking manually and actually being in touch with your data is really kind of cool. I like it. And it makes you more comfortable in there. And then, like Jack said, that one-to-one relationship, it's really interesting because I think when you have a one-to-one relationship with somebody, and it will help you plan out your future offers or who should get what, because then all you have to do is think like, oh, this person that I know took this action and they haven't taken this action, so let me make them this offer. And then if you have your segmentation in place, you just select the filters that apply, and now everybody that is on that path gets made the offer. So, while manual tracking is kind of a burden and you have to be super, super organized and you have to be in there pretty often to update it, like, if it's manual, that means anytime somebody joins your email list, you got to tag them, you got to tag any customers with the products they bought. So it is time consuming, but it does give you some insight into like how to segment and like what your segment should be as you go deeper.
That is so interesting. And I mean, that's like a really good point. Like that sort of the manual work that you had to do forced you to get like intimately familiar with the idea of segmentation, really, like, and being comfortable being like, yes, I'm putting these people into this box. I know that they signed up for this thing and they didn't buy. I know that these people bought the thing. And having to do that yourself manually on spreadsheets definitely, I think, does have some benefit. It gets you used to the process of doing it. And then, once you've got it, something where it's just a click of a button for you in your email marketing platform or your CRM. Once you can do that, man, like the possibilities open up for you, and you know what you can do because you've done it yourself previously. So that's like a really silver lining kind of way of looking at like all the BS that you'd have to deal with when it comes to manual tracking. I dig that though. Something else to note is like, if you find that your store and your email marketing software doesn't integrate directly, also look into Zapier. We'll link to Zapier in the show notes. It's kind of like you can think of it as like a bridge between tech pieces or software, to make data pass from one to the other in places where there might not usually be some sort of direct connection. So if you're not familiar with Zapier, definitely something worth checking out if you're feeling like, I don't want to do this manual work anymore. A lot of things may not be connected natively, but they can be zapped. So something to look into there for sure. But yeah, this is kind of like, I think some of the some of the higher level strategy when it comes to email marketing segmentation that we think about, I feel like we probably have some listeners that are like, oh man, I have a list of just, a nameless list of people that have maybe gotten collected at shows, or I exported them from, multiple Bandcamp pages over over the years, and that's kind of what I'm working with. I don't, maybe half of them have names, maybe half of them don't. I don't really have a whole lot of data on them otherwise. I want to kind of talk about that for a second, because I feel like it can be a common problem, and a lot of folks don't really know what to do with it. I have some thoughts, but from your perspective, Ed, where would you start if you were in a position like that, like very, very little data, just, maybe first names, maybe just email addresses, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, one of the worst things I think you can do is have an email list that's 5,000 person email list that is very cold, that you don't know. Maybe you bought it, maybe you got it, like Jack said, you collected over 5 years and you haven't touched it. Like, that's not an asset. It can be, but you need to test it out. So there's a couple different ways to test it, and we touched on this a little bit before we started recording, so I'm not going to steal Jack's thunder on his thoughts, but I mean, most basic way to test it is to send an email out, or send a couple emails out over a couple weeks, and just see what the open and click rates are. You typically want to be looking for like 20% open, 5% click. So test that out. If the list is at that, then great. Then you can put maybe like a re-engage and unsubscribe series into place and get the people off your email list that are not opening and engaging. But like, the email list is only a benefit to you if people are actually interested in what you're sending. So the first step for me would just be to test it out. So like I said, most basic way would just be send an email out, or you can do something a little bit more advanced that requires some actual action taking by by your fans and subscribers on the list, which is what Mr. Jack's going to touch on.
Yeah. So I think if I were in this position where I had a list with a bunch of email addresses and like very little data otherwise, what I would probably do is, one, like the first thing I would do is I would ask myself, like, where did I get these people? Like, where did this come from? That's the first thing that I would try to figure out. And I think that that's really important, because there's some stuff on there that might be valuable and other stuff on there that it's just like, there's no sense in bringing this on. Maybe you have a list from like a project that you were in, like, a decade ago, and those people haven't been emailed. It may not even be worth it, to take an email list with no names, no first name, no last name, just email addresses from like multiple projects ago that hasn't heard from you. It may not make any sense to even bother with that. But if you can start to sort out like where some of these people came from, especially if you can find like, maybe you combine them all into one big CSV file. That's the place that I would start, like figuring out where did these people come from and why do I think I want to email with them? And then what I would probably do is something similar to what you were saying, Ed, is take that list and I would build like a multi-day email marketing campaign where I'm reintroducing myself and my music to these people, whether it's new music, maybe it's a new project, or whether it's something you're just continuing to do. I would take this list, I would reintroduce myself to the people over multiple emails. And in the process, I would be asking them for more information. And what I would probably do is I would set up, one dedicated sort of form, or they could just use the update list fields sort of thing. If your email marketing platform has that kind of natively built into it, sometimes there's like a clickable link where people can just add in more information about themselves. But what I would probably do is I would almost put together another bribe. Maybe you've got new music coming out and you want people to sign up to be the first to get it, first to hear it. You could email them about that over, the course of a few weeks. And I would go heavy on the email here. I think if it's totally cold, I would be pretty heavy handed about emailing them to really find out, like, is this list worth having and working with, or should I just, start building up a subscriber base from scratch again? I would start emailing those people, asking them to sign up with their name and their email address. Maybe you could gather a little more information from them if you wanted to, but I would probably just start there. And then I would work to do that and then filter out anyone who hasn't either opened those emails or hasn't engaged with them any further. That way you're taking people who are on that list and, aren't as cold as the rest and taking them a step further and getting some more data on them. And then you can send more personalized emails. It's not just like, hey, or hello. It's actually, hey, Ed, hey, Jack. I would start there. And then I would do exactly like you said. Once I have that in place, I'd be putting together a re-engagement unsubscribe sort of sequence, which we'll talk about in a little bit further depth in a minute here. But I would put that into place to then just, filter out the rest that don't want to be there. That way you're not spending money and wasting your time sending emails to them. So yeah, that's kind of how I would approach handling a nameless list. And I think that would be, generally speaking, like I think that that's a recommendation that I've given quite a few times over the last couple of years, and I still feel pretty good about it. So that's my take.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you it's a small line you just said, but you are paying for your email list subscribers. From a most basic business standpoint, if you have 5,000 email subscribers or 2,000 email subscribers, your payment is tiered based off of how many subscribers you have. So having a list of 3,000 subscribers that don't have a name, are a cold email and that don't engage with you, that's only good for your ego. And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like I had to at one point be like, okay, well, what do I need, 10,000 emails for if 6,000 of them are the ones actually involved with what's going on? Like, that's where you got to kind of check your ego and just say, I'm only interested in people on my list that are opening, are engaging, are like highly, highly active and supportive. And other than that, you don't want them around. So, and if you don't buy that logic, then the next logic is like, well, you're paying money for those emails that aren't doing anything for you. So, I mean, warm them up or get them out. That's kind of my like basic principle, I guess.
Dude, yeah, I love that. I mean, it's really true. You don't want to be wasting your money. And yeah, I mean, push comes to shove, like at a certain point, like some of those emails just aren't worth anything to you. So there's no point in holding on to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is no point in holding on to them. So if you do find yourself in a situation, the other thing I agree really strongly with that you just said, Jack, is like, if you find yourself in a situation where you have an email list that's old and it's gone cold, like just send a lot of emails. All you're trying to do is see like if people are even going to open them. And you can exclude the emails and say, okay, if you opened an email, don't get this next one. But you just want to send a bunch to see who's going to open and click stuff so that you can clear it out. So don't be shy about doing that, especially if you're trying to warm up the email list. Like, don't send 10 in one day. It's not what we're saying. But you can get away with sending one every couple of days over, 2-3 weeks and like just see who's engaging and opening things up. So I think that's really, really important because we're talking about segmentation, but you only really want to be segmenting good data. You don't want to spend time segmenting, cold emails and cold customers or past customers or subscribers who aren't going to be interested in anything you have going on in the future. So I think that was a really good kind of clarifying point around not only segmentation and its importance, but also like the importance of actually having a list worth using. And if it's not worth using, then just start from scratch, and put segmentation in place and build it from there. But there's like I said, there's no need to have a list that is not active and engaged.
Yeah, dude. List hygiene is like just as important as having, very, very solid segmentation in place. I think it's equally as important. I feel like we've kind of covered the main priorities, at least in our minds, of what to do when it comes to segmentation. And you can get really, really granular with this stuff. You can have like people who bought more than 10 times. You could have people who spent $200 and then another segment of people who bought more than $500 and so on and so forth. You can have, segments for people who might be on your membership if you've got Patreon or a custom membership site or something like that. All of that kind of stuff you can definitely include. It just, those are a little more granular and kind of into those bigger umbrellas that we covered. Another thing, you can get pretty segmented when it comes to like, how many of my subscribers are in my state or in adjacent states for touring purposes. You can collect that kind of data over time, but it's not like those aren't like immediate priorities. I think that they're really, really nice to have, but they're not like the first things that I would focus on. I think like, first and foremost, you want to get clarity on who your subscribers are and where they subscribed from, who your customers are, and how many times they've bought. And then maybe also, how much they've purchased from you, LTV tracking. Those are the primary things that I would focus on. I also would consider making an unengaged and active type of segment. And some email marketing platforms have this kind of automatically sort of built into what they offer. But you could consider like, most email marketing platforms have like a rating system, which is great. So you can use that kind of as your guidepost. But if you've got, very specific specifications that you might want to include, you might say like, okay, people who are a 4-star rating and opened at least one email in the past 2 weeks, maybe those are like your really, really hot contacts. Or maybe it's people who are like my repeat customers who are 4-star contacts who opened all of my emails this month, that kind of thing. You can do really granular stuff, but again, not like, I guess where I'm going with this is like, you can get really creative and the possibilities are kind of endless. So it's just about thinking in terms of those bigger umbrellas and then deciding for yourself what you want to do from there and how really granular and nerdy you want to get with it.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to pivot a little bit here and talk beyond segmentation about like what we actually do with these segments or with these types of subscribers. Because I think that that's just as important as, the segmentation itself.
And real quick, as we jump into like, what do you do with the segments? And we touch on the kind of key automations and things that you can use the segments for. Like Jack said, you can get super granular with it. But if you're listening and you're like, I'm stressed out right now, because I definitely felt that way when I dove into it. Like, I would just challenge you to go into your autoresponder, and if you don't have one, just make a drip account. Make sure it makes sense for your email and like where you're at in your career and stuff. But like, make a drip account, go into your autoresponder, and just get comfortable, because segmentation is not hard. When you actually understand what it is, it's literally just looking at your subscribers and like sorting them. You used to have the thing with the M&Ms where you'd have to sort them out by color. That's what segmentation is.
Oh yeah.
So if you're all this like deeper, more granular stuff is kind of stressing you out, just go get comfortable with what segmentation is in the first place, how it functions within your actual autoresponder. Like, you can go into Drip or MailChimp and you can see what the options are. You can sort by tags, by groups. Like, spend time getting comfortable in there, because once you are, everything that Jack just said will be like clear as day in terms of like, oh, you could sort by product value, or you can sort by, how much they've spent lifetime, or this group. So we're throwing a lot of stuff out that's very much like stuff that we've seen and that's really, really good information. But if you're not at that point to digest it yet, just get comfortable and then come back and listen again, and it will make way more sense and be way more actionable for you. So that's just my final thought on like segments, what segments to have, and like maybe how to get comfortable actually creating and using those segments. And then, once you have segments and you're comfortable, you do want to use them. And there's a couple of key automations that we typically recommend to use them with. And we're going to jump into those and just touch on them really, really quickly for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. And that's great advice, I think, Ed. Like, it's easy to get overwhelmed with this stuff, and we've been throwing out a lot of definitions. I think you said it really well. Like, just getting comfortable with the platform that you're using for email marketing is a really solid way of kind of wrapping your head around what all of those definitions mean and how they work. And then that will start to give you an idea of what's important to you. Yeah. Because it's not, what's important to me isn't important to Ed and isn't important to anybody else. Like it kind of varies from artist to artist in some ways. But yeah, I think that's great advice. Diving into some of the kind of key automations. We cover a lot of this inside of Indie Pro. So if you want to learn more about email marketing, you can check out Indie Pro. There's a whole training on email marketing for musicians. And there's a ton of stuff in there that covers these specific automations that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to kick it off. Maybe we can just go like, one for one on this. Actually, that would be a fun way to do it. Let's go one for one on this and just talk about the automation and why we dig it, what we found it most useful for, and then we'll wrap it up from there. So the first automation that we talk about is an ISeries, often called an indoctrination sequence or indoctrination series or an intro series, and this is usually a series of emails that people get as soon as they sign up for your list, and it really gets them comfortable with hearing from you. It sets an expectation of what they're going to get when you're emailing with them. And it usually works to open loops and just get people to be engaged, try to get them to respond, and really just kind of get them used to hearing from you.
So that's the first one. Number two, we talk about is an ESeries. This is just, again, if an iSeries is the campaign that's going to get somebody comfortable receiving emails right when they sign up from you, an education series is actually telling people about you, kind of getting a relationship built with them. A lot of times what I like to do is, if it's for just general nurturing, like, sending video links, that kind of stuff, it's one step further than like the iSeries saying like, hey, here's who I am. The ESeries kind of takes them inside your world a little bit further.
Yeah, an ESeries, an engagement series, what we often use them in tandem with are bribes, permission offers, lead magnets, whatever you want to call it. They're directly tied to something that people often opted in for. You can also use them for other purposes. You could certainly send an ESeries as related to someone taking an action, like responding to you in an email. That might put them into an engagement series, kind of an unconventional way to do it. But typically they're tied to a bribe, and all of the content inside of those emails is getting them to, it's delivering the bribe, and then they're consuming the content throughout. And usually it leads to a follow-up action, sometimes a sale, sometimes moving them just a little bit deeper, asking them to do something else. It might not always be a sale, but typically it is. If you've got like a sales offer at the end of an experience or, a freebie that you were offering, usually an ESeries is a really solid way to deliver it. But yeah, an ESeries over delivers on the content, over the promise that you make in your permission offer. And it just works to, basically give value over the course of an email. And again, like Ed said, takes people deeper into your world. So we covered iSeries and ESeries, and the next automation that we're going to talk about is purchase-related automations. What I like to consider an A series, an Ascension series, is a sequence that's happening after somebody makes a purchase with you. And these take tons of different forms. Oftentimes they could be something as simple as someone getting a thank you email after they buy, and then 60 days later getting a win back email if they haven't purchased again, being like, hey, I've got a whole bunch of new merch in my store. I just launched, a new merch line around my tour, and I'd love if you go check it out. That can be one type of A series, an Ascension series. It's taking a customer and trying to get them to become a repeat customer. But there are other kinds of Ascension series as well. That's like a very basic one. But you could also do more granular sorts of A series, like people are being offered multiple products based on their buying history. But largely, very broad speaking, an A series works to take a purchaser and turn them into a repeat purchaser or get them to buy again after some time. And it's a really, really powerful automation to have in place. We use them all over the place at IndieX with a lot of our artists.
Yeah, they're awesome. And like the one you just said, I have one in place that is a pretty much a series that once you hit a certain lifetime value, you get a discount code emailed to you for our store. And I just put it in place probably a month ago, and yesterday we got our first sale from it. It was like somebody went over $200 LTV, and I think it was, like 20% off the store or something. And we've got them in place all the way up to $1,000 lifetime value, which we don't have anyone at yet, but we do have someone that's close to it. And we just took, 10% or whatever. So it's like once somebody spends $1,000, they get an email that says, go get anything in the store you want for free. It's like once you spend $500, you get 50% off. So it's so simple. And someone actually, this is how cool this is, like not to get off, side tangent, but we sent this is an automated email we built out. Somebody bought a product, then responded and said, thank you so much for the discount code and for like letting me be in your, 502 spam. Like, I really appreciate it. You guys gave me this discount code for being loyal to you. And I was like, wow, like talk about the perfect response, or what you would expect to see. So it's just really cool. And these are like, I love the Ascension series because as you start to generate customers, like, people get really into them.
That's such a great example of how to use like LTV segments, based on when someone hits a certain threshold. Like, I want to give them something, and you're still ascending them. You're getting them to buy one more time, but it's also making them feel really good and giving a lot of value in the process. So I think that's a really, really great example. I love that.
Yeah. And just to tie it back to earlier too, that idea, at least for us, came from like a friend of a friend buying like a bunch of products at once, and we were like, man, we feel like we should give them a discount code or like something for free, So that's where that one-to-one understanding of who's buying what on your list ties in, because we took that, we thought about it, and then we're like, oh, we could do this for everybody, and then the segmentation made it happen. So that's super cool. So ISeries, ESeries, A-series, and then the last one that we put in place pretty much is just status quo. For everybody that we talk to, is like re-engage and unsubscribe, which is technically 2 series, but they function together. So we just consider them one. This is for when people go cold on your email list and they've joined. So say you've run like a permission offer and you got 2,000 emails, and now it's 6 months later and half of those people haven't opened an email, since the original launch. A re-engage and unsubscribe series is really for list health. Kind of like we were talking about, you want to get the people off the list that aren't engaged with you. And this gives them a chance to get re-engaged. And if they don't, then it unsubscribes them, saving like you money on your monthly fee and also their inbox from receiving tons and tons of emails from you. So the re-engage series is typically just 4 to 5 emails saying like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Like, this is what's been going on in my world. It sends over, 10 days or whatever, 4 or 5 emails. And then if they don't open any of those, they get put into an unsubscribe series that says, hey, okay, you haven't opened any emails and this is the last chance. If you don't open this, then I'm going to go ahead and unsubscribe you. If you want to join, you can click this button to join again in the future. But that's pretty much what it is. It tries to save people, and it typically does do a really good job of re-engaging people on the list. And it kind of rewarms some people that have gone cold before they get unsubscribed from your list.
Yeah, it's a really good way to make that email list hygiene that we were talking about pretty much automatic. It's a great kind of like staple automation to have in place. And I think, that really covers the main core things that we wanted to talk about in this episode, segmentation, what to do when you're working with like unideal email marketing sources as far as like what your lists are looking like. And I feel like I can't segment. I don't know what to segment. And also some of the baseline automations that are good to have in place. So if you've been wondering like, how do I get this email marketing stuff going? I've been listening to Creative Juice for the past month, and they've been talking a lot about talking to my fans, but I don't know how to do the tech. Hopefully this gives you guys some insights and some ideas into the things that you can be doing, how you can get your email list cleaned up if you're just getting started, or if you're, just looking to maximize what you've got already. This should give you some good ideas. So I hope you guys take it and roll with it and start turning those fans into subscribers and turn those subscribers into customers, and just move people deeper and deeper into a relationship with you and grow your business.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Just get started on it.
Hell yeah, Indies. Well, we will see you guys next time on Creative Juice. Looking forward to it. Peace out, Indies.
Can y'all really feel the East Coast, feel the West Coast?